There comes a moment in every relationship, a moment that divides what was from what will be. It's the moment after you walk away, the silence that follows your absence. That's when truth begins to echo in his chest. That's when he starts to understand what he once had, what he once ignored, and what he'll never experience again. Because it's only when you're gone that he realizes your worth. We live in a world where people get used to consistency. They mistake presence for permanence. When someone keeps showing up, keeps giving, keeps forgiving, their love begins to blend into the background. It's not that they don't care, it's that comfort has dulled their awareness. But when that comfort is gone, when your laughter fades from the room, when your energy is no longer there to hold the space, that's when reality hits. That's when appreciation is born in the shadow of loss. This speech isn't about heartbreak, it's about awakening. It's about the powerful shift that happens when you stop begging to be seen and start allowing your absence to do the speaking. Because sometimes the loudest "I told you so" isn't spoken, it's lived. Familiarity has a strange way of dulling our senses. When something or someone becomes a constant presence, we stop seeing it. We stop noticing the details that once made our hearts skip. We begin to assume it will always be there. That's what happens when love becomes familiar. It blends into the background of daily life. And that's where the danger begins. Because what we grow used to, we start to take for granted. In the beginning, he saw you clearly. Every moment with you felt alive. The way you laughed, the way you listened, the way you showed up, it all meant something. You were new energy, light, stability, a kind of warmth he didn't know he needed until he found it. But over time, your consistency became his comfort zone. The very qualities that once drew him in, the reliability, the understanding, the effort, slowly became things he assumed would always be there. You went from being a miracle to being a certainty. And in his comfort, he stopped seeing your worth. That's the quiet tragedy of familiarity. It doesn't happen overnight. It creeps in gradually, disguised as routine. He stopped saying, "Thank you," because he forgot what it felt like to not have you. He stopped noticing your kindness because it was always present. He started believing that love was effortless because you made it look that way. You became his safety net, and he stopped realizing that safety nets don't appear by accident. They're built thread by someone who chooses to care. And yet the more you gave, the less he saw. Because comfort doesn't inspire gratitude, it breeds complacency. It's human nature to believe that what's consistent is permanent. We don't miss the sunrise until the sky goes dark. We don't value the warmth until the fire burns out. He didn't see your light dimming, didn't notice your patience thinning, because he thought love was infinite simply because it had always been there. But love isn't infinite, it's intentional. It's something we must notice, nurture, and appreciate. And when that appreciation disappears, the connection begins to fracture silently, invisibly. You start to feel unseen, unappreciated, even while standing right in front of him. You start wondering if he even notices you anymore, or if you've become another part of his scenery. Comfortable, expected, but no longer special. That's when your heart begins to shift. And one day, you stop trying, not out of anger, but out of exhaustion. You stop over-explaining, stop chasing acknowledgement, stop bending yourself into smaller shapes to be understood. You realize that your love has been mistaken for a given rather than a gift. And that's when something powerful happens. You begin to detach, slowly, quietly, almost without realizing it. You start to reclaim your energy. You start choosing peace over proving yourself. You start to remember who you were before being taken for granted became the norm. Then you leave. And in that moment, when your presence vanishes, when your voice no longer fills the silence, everything changes. The comfort he once felt becomes confusion. The ease he once took for granted turns into emptiness. Suddenly, he feels the weight of the space you used to fill. Every little thing that seemed so ordinary when you were there becomes painfully extraordinary now that you're not. He replays memories like movies, realizing he was living inside something beautiful without ever appreciating the view. That's when it hits him, the truth he never saw coming. You weren't just someone who loved him, you were someone who anchored him. Your care, your patience, your consistency, they were the foundation, the heartbeat of everything he called home. And now that you're gone, he sees it all, the moments he ignored, the gestures he overlooked, the love he thought was endless. Familiarity made him blind, but your absence made him see. It took losing your presence for him to understand that what he treated as ordinary was, in fact, extraordinary. And by the time he realizes it, you've already learned your own lesson, that love deserves appreciation, not assumption. Because once familiarity turns into blindness, it's only distance that restores sight, and that's when the real lesson begins. Sometimes silence becomes the loudest message of all. You can talk, explain, express, and plead, but words lose their meaning when they fall on ears that have grown too comfortable to listen. That's when life steps in and teaches through contrast. Because there are lessons no amount of conversation can deliver, lessons that can only be learned in your absence. When you finally stop showing up, when your energy no longer fills the room, that's when he hears the echo of everything you once said but was too distracted to absorb. Your absence becomes a mirror. It reflects everything he refused to see while you were still there. Suddenly, he notices the spaces where your laughter used to live, the quiet where your presence used to soothe. The rhythm of his days changes, and not for the better. The conversations that once flowed so easily turn into silence. The companionship that once felt unshakable turns into loneliness. That emptiness doesn't just remind him of you, it reveals the role you truly played in his life. You see, when you're present, people often assume your energy is endless. They think your patience will stretch forever, that your kindness is something you'll always offer, no matter how much it's taken for granted. But absence has a way of rewriting that narrative. When you leave, when you stop calling, when your text stop lighting up his phone, when your support is no longer guaranteed, that's when the impact of your presence hits. Your silence becomes louder than any words you could have spoken. And in that silence, realization begins. He starts remembering the way you used to care. He recalls the times you went out of your way to make him feel understood, to make his world lighter. Those small gestures, those moments he once brushed off as normal, now weigh heavily on his mind. The things that once annoyed him start to feel precious. The routines that once felt predictable now ache with nostalgia, because what was once ordinary has now become unreachable. It's ironic, isn't it? The very silence he once accused you of when you stopped trying to explain yourself becomes the silence that teaches him the lesson your words never could. It's in your absence that he starts to notice the things he ignored. The warmth in your energy, the steadiness in your love, the quiet strength in your presence. He starts realizing that it wasn't just you he lost. It was the version of himself that only existed because of your love. This is where the power of distance begins to work its magic, not as punishment, but as perspective. Absence strips away distraction. It exposes truth. It allows the heart to feel the weight of what it once took lightly. When you're gone, the excuses no longer matter. The pride that once stood between you crumbles under the pressure of regret. He can't call it drama anymore. He can't say you overreacted. Because now, in the silence you've left behind, he finally sees that all you ever wanted was to be heard, understood, and valued. The thing about absence is that it doesn't just remind someone of what they've lost, it redefines it. He begins to see your worth, not as something convenient, but as something irreplaceable. The love he dismissed as always there becomes the standard by which he'll measure every connection that follows. And though he may try to fill that void with noise, nothing quite compares to the quiet peace you brought. So don't fear the silence you leave behind. Don't doubt them. A message your absence sends. It speaks in ways your voice no longer could. It reaches deeper than arguments ever did. It makes him face the truth he ran from, the truth that your presence wasn't just a part of his life. It was his stability, his calm, his center. And now that you're gone, your absence has become the lesson, the one he'll never forget. Gratitude is a curious thing. It often blooms too late. When something or someone becomes part of our daily lives, we stop pausing to appreciate it. We begin to expect it, to assume it, to rely on it without acknowledgement. It's only when that presence is gone that gratitude finally wakes up. When you were there, loving him, supporting him, showing up no matter what, he mistook your effort for ease. He thought your giving came without thought, that your care was simply who you were, not something you chose every single day. But when you left, when that stream of love suddenly dried up, the absence became his teacher. The silence became his reminder. In those first moments without you, he probably told himself he was fine. He probably tried to fill the void with distraction, friends, work, noise, anything to avoid feeling the loss. But then, in the quiet spaces between distractions, it started to hit him. The messages you used to send weren't just routine. They were connection. The small gestures, the way you checked in, the way you remembered details, the way you cared without needing to be asked, were expressions of real love. They weren't obligations, they were devotion. And suddenly he began to miss them all, not in a superficial way, but deeply achingly, because those little things had woven themselves into the rhythm of his life, and now that rhythm was broken. Loss has a way of illuminating value. What once seemed ordinary becomes precious when it's gone. He starts to replay moments in his mind, conversations he brushed off, times when you tried to talk and he didn't listen, times when he took your patience for granted. He realizes that you didn't just offer love. You offered understanding, space, and safety. You gave him a kind of emotional grounding that few people ever experience. And now, without it, he feels untethered. The things he once complained about now haunt him. The love he once thought he could live without becomes the very thing he craves most. There's a saying that gratitude and regret are twin emotions. They often show up together, but one always arrives too late. That's what he's feeling now. Regret is the shadow of missed gratitude. He sees now that love isn't about having someone. It's about valuing them while they're there. It's about recognizing effort in the moment, not reminiscing about it when it's gone. But that's the lesson he's forced to learn through loss. It's not that he didn't love you. It's that he didn't understand the depth of love he was being given. And now with you gone, he finally does. He starts to notice the void in every part of his life. Mornings feel longer. Even the smallest things, songs, scents, routines, remind him of you. Gratitude begins to awaken inside him, not because you're there to see it, but because you're not. That's the cruel beauty of loss. It teaches appreciation through absence. He finally realizes that what you gave wasn't guaranteed, that your love was a privilege, not a promise. That being loved by someone who chooses to stay despite imperfections is not something that happens every day. And as he sits in that realization, something shifts. The pride that once blinded him begins to fade. The ego that once told him he could do better begins to crumble. What takes its place is humility, raw, humbling gratitude for everything you were and everything he lost. It's a gratitude that arrives too late to fix the past, but just in time to change his future. Because now he understands that love is not measured by how much we receive, it's measured by how much we recognize in the moment. He's finally learned that appreciation is not something to be saved for later, it's something that must be lived right now. But that's the irony of it all. It took losing you for him to understand that truth. And even though it hurts, that pain will shape him. It will make him softer, wiser, more awake. And maybe, just maybe, that's the purpose of your absence, not to punish him, but to teach him what love really means. Because your presence showed him love's beauty, but your absence showed him its value. Pain is often the teacher that pride refuses to learn from until it's too late. When he loses you, that pain becomes the very voice he can no longer ignore. It speaks to him in the quiet moments when he's alone, when the distractions fade, when his own thoughts turn against him. That ache in his chest isn't just loneliness, it's realization. It's the dawning awareness that he had something extraordinary and let it slip through his fingers. Pain, in its cruel honesty, becomes the mirror that reflects every truth he avoided while you were still there, while you loved him. You tried to show him what connection truly meant. You offered patience when he gave you distance, understanding when he gave you silence, love when he gave you uncertainty. You tried to reach him with kindness, with empathy, with consistency. But he wasn't ready to see it. Maybe he was too distracted by his own world, too confident that you'd never leave, too sure that love could survive without effort. So he didn't listen, not until pain forced him to. It's strange how the human heart works. When comfort is present, we crave excitement. When loss comes, we crave the comfort we once dismissed. Pain reverses the illusion. It clears away the noise and shows what was real all along. When he lies awake at night, replaying moments in his mind, he doesn't think about the things that went wrong. He thinks about the moments you were right there, loving him in ways he never acknowledged. He remembers your patience, your loyalty, your quiet strength. The same qualities he once took for granted now haunt him. The same words he ignored now echo in his memory. That's what pain does. It resurrects awareness. You see, pain is a sculptor. It shapes us by removing what's unnecessary. It cuts through pride, ego, and illusion until all that's left is truth. And the truth for him is simple. He lost someone who genuinely cared. He lost someone who believed in him, supported him, and stood by him even when he made it difficult. Now, in the absence of that love, he sees himself more clearly. He sees the selfishness he once justified, the neglect he once minimized, the arrogance he once mistook for strength. Pain has stripped him of the luxury of denial. And here's the irony. Your departure gave him something your presence never could: accountability. Pain forced him to confront himself. It showed him that love is not an infinite resource, that people who give endlessly eventually run out of pieces to offer. The hurt he feels now is not punishment, it's education. It's the emotional cost of realizing that love is not guaranteed, that it demands attention, care, and gratitude. And as much as it hurts, that pain is also the very thing that can transform him if he lets it. He'll start to see patterns. He'll notice how often he dismissed affection because he didn't know how to receive it. He'll realize how often he shut you out because he mistook vulnerability for weakness. And every realization will sting, but with each one he'll grow. Because pain, unlike comfort, doesn't let us stay the same. It forces change. It teaches humility. It opens the heart. This is the part he never expected. The way losing you wouldn't just hurt, but heal him in disguise. Because now he understands that love isn't about control or comfort. It's about contribution. It's about showing up. It's about seeing the other person, not just needing them. Pain has become the wake-up call he never wanted but desperately needed. So while you move on and rebuild yourself, he's left learning in the only classroom that could teach him regret. Every ache, every memory, every what-if becomes a lesson he can't escape. And in that pain, he finally discovers what love truly meant. Because only by feeling its loss can he begin to grasp its depth. It's not a cruel punishment. It's divine justice. Pain has a purpose. It reveals the truth he ignored, the love he undervalued, and the growth he resisted. And even though it took losing you for him to learn, the lesson will last a lifetime. There's something transformative about watching someone's absence force another person into reflection. While he's sitting in the quiet, replaying the moments he missed and the chances he wasted, you're entering a new season, one that's about growth, not grief. Because while he's learning through regret, you're learning through rebirth. The same pain that broke you open becomes the soil in which you plant your strength. You start realizing that your worth was never diminished because he couldn't see it. It was simply waiting for you to remember it yourself. At first, that growth feels strange. After all, you spent so long giving, explaining, compromising, holding space for someone who never truly met you halfway. Your love became a language he never learned to speak fluently. But when you walk away, you start to reclaim that energy. You redirect it inward. You begin to heal, not by forgetting him, but by forgiving yourself for staying too long in places where you were only half seen. That's where true growth begins, not in anger, but in awakening. As you move forward, something shifts in the way you carry yourself. You no longer chase validation. You no longer wait for closure. You start to understand that closure doesn't come from his apology. It comes from your evolution. You realize that peace isn't found in the past, but built in the present, one healed boundary at a time. You stop asking, why didn't he see my worth? And start asking, why did I stop seeing it? That question, though painful, becomes powerful. It's the turning point from victimhood to victory. And here's the beauty. Your growth doesn't just change you, it teaches him too. He begins to see you not as the woman who waited for him to understand, but as the woman who learned to stand without him. Your silence, your distance, your transformation, they all speak louder than any conversation you could ever have. While he's stuck in reflection, you're moving in resurrection. He's trapped in memories, you're creating new ones. The very absence that hurts him becomes the empowerment that heals you. Over time, he begins to notice the change. Maybe he sees you smiling again, genuinely this time, not as a mask, but as a reflection of freedom. Maybe he hears about your growth, your new purpose, your strength, and it hits him not just that you're gone, but that you've become someone even more radiant in your distance than you ever were in his presence. That realization burns not because he hates you, but because he finally sees that your worth was never dependent on his recognition. It existed all along. It just needed your freedom to shine through. Your evolution becomes his wake-up call. Every step you take toward your own healing is a reminder of what he lost when he chose comfort over effort. You don't have to prove anything. Your peace is proof enough. You don't have to explain anything. Your growth explains everything. You're no longer defined by how he treated you. You're defined by how you rose beyond it. That's the shift that changes everything. And maybe one day when the dust settles, he'll look back and understand that losing you wasn't just the loss of love. It was the loss of a mirror that reflected his best potential. But by then, you won't be waiting for that realization. You'll already be far beyond it, living a life so full that his absence no longer feels like an ache, but like a lesson. Because while his regret keeps him stuck in the past, your growth propels you into the future. And that's the most powerful transformation of all. The moment when your healing becomes louder than his heartbreak. It's not about proving your worth anymore. It's about living it. And when that happens, when your energy shifts from pain to purpose, you no longer need him to understand what he lost. You already understand what you gained. There comes a moment when the final lesson settles in, not with fireworks or anger, but with quiet clarity. You realize that love without appreciation will always fade, but self-worth never does. That truth becomes the foundation you now stand on. For so long, you poured your heart into proving your love, showing your devotion, giving endlessly without asking much in return. You believe that if you just loved hard enough, he would see your value. But the truth is, no amount of love can make someone recognize what they refuse to acknowledge. Appreciation must be chosen, not demanded. And when it isn't given, love starts to lose its light. That's what happened. Your love began to dim, not because you stopped caring, but because you started to wake up. You began to see that staying in a place where you're unseen isn't strength. It's self-abandonment. You realize that loving someone deeply doesn't mean sacrificing yourself completely. Love, when it's healthy, should make both people expand, not one person shrink. But when you left, you reclaimed all the pieces of yourself you gave away in the name of keeping the peace. You stopped being the one who always had to fix things, the one who carried both hearts just to keep love alive. You understood that self-worth isn't built on someone's recognition of you. It's built on your recognition of yourself. Meanwhile, he's left to face the weight of his own realization. He begins to understand that what faded wasn't just your presence. It was the version of himself that existed when he was loved by someone who saw his potential even when he didn't. Your absence becomes a mirror, showing him how carelessly he treated something sacred. The attention he used to dismiss, the affection he once overlooked now become memories that sting with truth. He finally understands that love is not something we're entitled to. It's something we must earn through effort, consistency, and gratitude. But here's where the most profound shift happens. Your heart no longer seeks his recognition. You no longer need him to see your worth, to believe in it yourself. You've outgrown the version of you that needed validation to feel valuable. You now understand that love is not about proving you're enough for someone. It's about realizing you were always enough, even when they couldn't see it. You stop asking, why couldn't he love me better? And instead whisper, why did I stay so long in a place where I had to beg to be seen? That realization doesn't come with bitterness. It comes with freedom. And that freedom is everything. It's what turns heartbreak into power. It's what transforms loss into liberation. You no longer see his absence as emptiness. You see it as space. Space to breathe, to rebuild, to become. You start attracting peace instead of chaos, reciprocity instead of confusion, love that recognizes your worth instead of love that tests it. You begin to understand that walking away wasn't the end of love. It was the beginning of self-love. And that kind of love doesn't fade. It grows stronger with every boundary you honor, every standard you raise, every truth you finally embrace. So yes, he'll realize your worth, but by the time he does, it will no longer matter. Because your worth is not defined by who regrets losing you. It's defined by how powerfully you choose yourself after being forgotten. That's the ultimate lesson. Love without appreciation fades, but self-worth never does. When he looks back, he'll see the light he lost. But when you look forward, you'll see the light you've become. And that is the moment you'll know you never really lost anything. You only returned home to yourself. In the end, what this entire journey teaches us is that love, no matter how deep or beautiful, cannot survive where it goes unappreciated. The story of him realizing your worth only after you're gone is not just about heartbreak. It's about awakening. It's about how the heart learns through contrast. When you were there, your presence was so constant, so reliable, that it became invisible to him. He thought your love would always be within reach, that your patience had no limits, that your heart could withstand endless neglect. But the truth of life and of love is that nothing grows in the soil of assumption. When you finally walked away, it wasn't an act of revenge or pride. It was the natural ending of a chapter where one person gave endlessly, while the other remained blind. Your absence became the consequence, not the punishment. The beauty of absence is that it restores sight. When you stepped away, Everything he once ignored began to glow in memory. Every laugh, every word, every quiet act of care started echoing through the emptiness he created. Suddenly, he saw the moments he dismissed as small, the way you always checked in, the way you brought calm when chaos came, the way you believed in him when even he didn't. Those weren't just gestures, they were foundations. And when those foundations were gone, the entire structure of his comfort collapsed. He began to understand that love is not measured in grand gestures or promises. It's measured in the quiet, consistent presence of someone who chooses you every day. But by the time he reached that realization, the chance to nurture it had passed. Yet, the story doesn't end with his regret. It continues with your rebirth, because when you left, you didn't just walk away from him. You walked toward yourself. You started remembering the version of you that existed before you were dimmed by disappointment. You began to rebuild, not for the sake of proving your worth, but for the sake of honoring it. You learned that peace is not found in being chosen. It's found in choosing yourself. You stopped waiting for apologies that never came and started offering forgiveness, not for him, but for your own freedom. And in that space of healing, you discovered something extraordinary, that the end of one love story can be the beginning of a deeper one, the one you have with yourself. Meanwhile, he lives with the realization that came too late. He learns, through absence, what presence truly meant. He understands that love without effort dies quietly, and appreciation delayed is appreciation denied. His pain becomes his teacher, his regret becomes his reflection. He may spend months, even years, replaying memories, wondering how he could have been so blind. And in those reflections, he grows. Because that's the paradox of love lost. It often matures the heart that once took it for granted. He'll be more careful next time, more aware, more intentional. But no matter how much he grows, he'll always know that the love he lost with you is the kind that doesn't come twice. As I close this message tonight, I want to take a moment to simply say, thank you. Thank you for showing up with an open heart, for listening, not just with your ears, but with your spirit. Thank you for allowing these words to meet you where you are, whether you're in the middle of healing, rediscovering yourself, or learning to let go. It takes courage to face the truth that love sometimes teaches through loss, and even more courage to choose growth instead of resentment. You've done that simply by being here, by seeking understanding, by daring to evolve. Remember this, you are not defined by who failed to recognize your worth. You are defined by the way you rise after being unseen, by the way you keep loving, by the way you refuse to shrink. The story of your strength doesn't end in heartbreak. It begins there. Every ending carries the seed of a new beginning, and yours is already blooming. You've turned pain into wisdom, silence into clarity, and loss into liberation. That is something to be proud of. So, as you move forward, carry this truth in your heart. You don't have to prove your value to anyone who couldn't see it. The ones who are meant for you will never need to be reminded. They will recognize your light without you having to dim it for them. And when that happens, love will no longer feel like effort. It will feel like alignment. Thank you for walking through this journey with me tonight, for opening yourself to reflection, and for daring to believe that something better always follows something broken. Your strength, your self-awareness, your growth. They are all proof that even after love fades, you can still bloom beautifully. Until next time, take care of your heart, honor your peace, and never forget you are not what was lost. You are remain strong, radiant, and whole. Thank you, and goodbye for now.